Hi everyone, welcome to the Bookkeeping Made Simple podcast. My name is Donna. I'm the president and CEO of Bookkeeping Made Simple, an accounting firm located in Pleasant Grove, Utah. We are going to talk today about debt. What is good debt? What is bad debt? And when it's appropriate to take out debt. A lot of people get in trouble with debt, particularly with regard to their business, so I wanted to talk about that a little bit. This also kind of flows through because a lot of my clients are solopreneurs, small business owners, don't have, they may or may not have a really good handle on their businesses. And it's very easy for your personal finance to bleed over into your business finance when you are the business owner and vice versa. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. The first thing I wanted to talk about is there are people out there that say debt is bad, period, full stop, end of discussion. I am not one of those people. I honestly believe that debt can be used as a tool to help you move forward in your life and in your business. And what I mean by that, I don't know about you viewers, but I personally don't have enough money to just pay cash for a house. That's just not going to be happening anytime soon. And so waiting until I have the money to purchase a house instead of taking out a loan is actually counterproductive to my goals. So let's start by kind of understanding debt. Not all debt is created equal. Some debt is a stepping stone to financial growth. Like I said, if you're taking out a mortgage on your home in order to get into a home, then it is good debt. It is something that it's not a bad thing. You want to make sure that you're not house rich and cash poor, which I'll talk about in a later video, but this is something that moves you forward towards your financial goals. Bad debt can hold you back and derail your financial goals. So let's kind of explore the differences between when it's appropriate to take on debt, when it's not appropriate to take on debt, and actionable steps so that you know how to pay off your debt quickly and effectively. One of the struggles that a lot of people have about debt is the mindset that they have. I'm always going to go back to money mindset, that money is easy to spend and hard to save, which is not true. It can be just as easy to save. It can be very easy to pay off a loan if you have a plan. So let's talk about good debt. This is anything that can increase your income or add value to your life over time. In a business model, it is anything that's going to help you move forward with your business. So if you need to take on debt to purchase inventory, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You are going to have to buy that inventory or you're not going to have anything to sell. So some of the things that I would say are good debt. The first one is surprise you, it's student loans. Student loans are tricky, okay? They can be terrible and they can be good. But depending on the field you go into, I'm going to emphasize this, depending on the field you go into, if you are taking on student debt to go into a field or expand your offering that requires a college degree, and I'm going to be the first one to tell you, not all college degrees are created equal. I went into accounting and got a degree in accounting because I was already in the field. I liked the work, and I felt like in order to provide the best possible value to my clients, I needed to have more education than I already had. And I felt like if I had letters behind my name showing that I worked hard, that I did what I needed to do, that I studied what I needed to study, then it would be something that my clients could look at, my prospective clients could look at and say, well, you know, she has an MBA, she has a master's of accounting, she should know how to do my books, right? So that was something that I was very deliberate and thoughtful about. It wasn't something that I said, it has always been the case. When I was 18, went to college for the first time, my major was computer science. It was a was and remains a difficult field. Very, the potential for earnings is skyrocketing, and it's the same thing with accounting. When I went into accounting, I found out that there's a shortage of accountants, and some businesses are outsourcing their accounting to India, which, by the way, I will not do. But it was a proven field that I already knew. I knew how much money I could make. I knew what the worst case scenario was. I knew what the best case scenario was, and I considered how much debt I was taking on. So it can be a necessary step towards higher paying jobs. It does not have to be. I did spend a lot of time working in fast food, and I do recommend that just about everybody either serve a tour in the military or go into the trades, at least for a little while you're figuring things out. College, by the way, is not the time to try to figure out your life. It's expensive. It'd be better to take a gap year. So if you are thoughtful and mindful about student loan debt, it can be very useful to increase your potential earnings over time. And it may be a necessary step. If you want to be a doctor or engineer, obviously you have to go to college. If you want to be a CPA, you have to go to college. And even if you want to be an electrician, which doesn't require a college degree, you may want to go to college, or you may want to get some certificates to help you improve your earnings. The second one is mortgage. Buying a home is the number one way to build wealth in the United States. People who own their homes have a much higher net worth than those who do not. So this is an investment in an asset. Real estate does actually appreciate over time. There may be some hiccups along the way, but overall, real estate only goes up. So this is considered good debt. You're either going to have to pay rent or buy a house. Okay? And I am very prejudiced towards buying a house because I haven't had that opportunity. There are a lot of downsides to renting, which I will go into in other videos, but I will go into again. But a mortgage is a good use of debt. Business loans. If you need money to start or expand your business, this is a good time to use debt. You can take on debt to, like I mentioned, you can buy inventory, take that big next step. In accounting, we talk a lot about fixed expenses versus variable expenses, but some of those fixed expenses do have to make a big jump. So your variable expenses will go up per customer, but your fixed expenses, I may do just fine in my office until I get maybe 3 employees, and then I have to move into another office, or however many, suits my situation. And then I'm going to have to go into another office. I'm going to have to expand my office space. So keeping that in mind, I might have to make a very large jump in my expenses that my current client load or customer base may not support. When that happens, I might find it necessary to take on more debt. Another likely scenario that I've seen a lot is when a client has a business plan that requires expensive equipment. One of my clients does granite countertops, another one does bathroom glass. And in both cases, they had to go out and buy the equipment, but they didn't have enough ready cash to cover the equipment, so they had to take out loans to cover the cost of the equipment. This is also considered to be a good use of debt. I shouldn't say good debt versus bad debt. It is a good use of debt versus a bad use of debt. So thoughtfully and mindfully taking out business loans to help you bring in more money and reach your long-term goals can be a very good use of business debt. You have to be strategic with this. I'm saying these are all good debts, that they are good uses of the debt tool. However, having said that, You have to be thoughtful, mindful, strategic. It has to be part of a plan. And then the last one I really want to talk about is any sort of real estate investment. So if you want to purchase rental properties that can generate some passive income and build your wealth, that is a good use of debt. The top thing, though, for using debt wisely is to have a clear purpose. In other words, one, if you're taking on business debt, you almost never want to use that to pay your operating expenses. If you're taking on debt to pay your operating expenses because your sales are not high enough to cover them, then you need to increase your sales or you need to cut costs. Or you need to talk to our CFO and COO services, which we are coming out with a package on that pretty soon. You also want to make sure that the returns outweigh the cost of the debt. Using capital always comes with a cost. We usually call that cost interest, but there's also loan origination fees. There's losing the use of that money over time because you needed it in a lump sum first. So there's a lot of cost, and of course, being able to sleep at night. There's a lot of costs that come with debt, and you need to have a plan and a strategy and a purpose before you take on debt. You need to make sure that your financial or other returns outweigh the cost of this debt. Now, what do I mean by other returns? I was just reading Grant Cardone. I think it was The Obsessed and the Average. And he talked about buying a jet. Well, financially, it made no sense for him to buy a business jet. However, time-wise, it did. Because his purpose was to speak to as many people as he possibly could, and he could not do that if he was flying commercial. And at that point, he was making enough money he could afford it. It didn't make financial sense at first. And then he purchased it and started using it. And that actually dramatically increased his income. So you need to make sure that the returns, whether it's financial or something else, outweigh the cost of the debt. It's something that's very, very personal, but it has to be thought through. A bad use of debt is typically because people want to consume. People want to keep up with the Joneses. These do not contribute to long-term financial growth. So, credit card debt. Well, people do say credit card debt is a bad use of debt. I disagree. If you use credit cards, again, thoughtfully, strategically, and with a plan, then they can be absolutely excellent for what you need them for. So if you are deliberately, for example, I have a credit card, it's a very low limit. I use it for one purpose and one purpose only. And I know I can pay that card off every month, so I don't feel bad putting some luxury items on that card because I've already budgeted the money. I'm already expecting it to come out, and I know exactly if that card's being paid off, I know what was put on it. And it allows me to earn points and cash back. But again, you have to be very strategic about the use of credit cards. Where people get into trouble with credit cards is when they are running things like dining out. Again, you can put your dinner out on a credit card to immediately pay it off because you might want to get the points, you might want the cash back, but you have to immediately pay it off. And most people will carry a balance. So if you are paying off your credit card every month and you are not thinking in the back of your head, oh, it's free money, then it can be very useful. However, the way a lot of people approach credit cards is to use them for completely non-essential things, shopping sprees, luxury items, clothing. I'm a woman, so I'm going to say handbags, makeovers, hair, nails, Botox, any of that kind of stuff. That's just almost impulse spending. It just makes it so easy to spend. thoughtful and careful about the use of credit cards to make sure that you are using them appropriately and in a way that brings in more money. Like I said, cashback can be great. Travel points can be great. But again, don't run after credit cards. Make sure that you're paying those off every month. These often, by the way, can be very high interest rates, and it can be very difficult to pay them off quickly. Another one would be high interest personal loans, and I typically see this. I got into trouble with this in the 90s. In the early 90s, I remember my then husband, we were living in Germany. My then husband wanted to take a personal loan to travel back to the States because he was homesick. And I tried to talk him out of it, and he insisted on it. And we still didn't make that trip. But I have seen people take out loans for vacations and weddings and expensive, and they feel great in the short term, but in the long term, now you've already had the experience, and now you have to pay back the debt. You have to be, again, very, very, very careful. Or choosing less expensive options rather than taking out a loan to finance a vacation. Auto loans, and I'm going to emphasize for luxury vehicles. I have a Honda Civic. Excuse me. Now, granted, he shopped very carefully for his Audi. He also works on cars himself, so he's not reliant on a mechanic. At the time that he bought the Audi, he was making very, very good money, and he paid less for his Audi than I did for a used car same year that wasn't nearly as nice. That is a good use of an auto loan. He shopped very carefully for his luxury car. He did take out a loan to pay for it, but when you're paying, I don't remember how much he paid, $14,000 for a slightly older luxury vehicle, that can be a really good use of debt. He needed a car anyway, and his payment is less than mine. I, on the other hand, I specifically wanted a new car because I've always driven old meters. I've never had a electric car. I've always driven old meters. I needed something reliable with excellent gas mileage that I didn't have to worry about anymore. I couldn't afford a brand new Audi, they're $100,000, but I could go out and buy a cheap Honda Civic that is reliable. I laughed and said, you don't get rid of a Honda because it breaks down, you just get tired of driving it. And my plan was, and is, to pay off the loan in full and keep the car. So I'm not spending a lot of money on a luxury good. It was something that I needed. But I also understood depreciation starts with a new car as soon as you drive it off the lot. I chose not to have any unnecessary upgrades on it. I was very mindful about what I did and very careful about how much I could comfortably pay in a monthly payment. As well as, I've mentioned before, car salesmen love the four-square technique of which is more important, your price, your interest rate, term of loan, or your monthly payment. And I always go in and say, well, you can try to four-square me. If you can't hit all four squares, we do not have a deal. So you need to be kind of mindful. I've seen people that are high earners, but they buy luxury cars strictly as a status item to show off, to kind of give that message that I am the money that I'm charging you. I don't think that's a good use of debt. So a poor use of debt drains your resources. It doesn't add value, and it does not improve your financial what you want to do in these cases is live below your means. Now, I'm bringing this up, and I'm also going to kind of talk a little bit to the Gen Zers, the younger generations coming in, and point out that when I was a kid, I'm Gen X, when I was a kid, we didn't have credit cards. Credit cards really kind of only came on the scene in the 70s and really blew up in the 80s. And if you had one or two, you were quite well off, considered, all things considered. So everything that my parents had, they paid cash for, except for auto loans, and I think they may have paid cash for those, and their home. And they had some debt from my dad's schooling. So today we pay for everything on debt. Back in the 60s and 70s, when my parents were starting their lives together, that wasn't an option. So I kind of look at the younger kids, and I'm constantly saying, stay out of debt. Use your credit cards responsibly. You should be using them to build credit. You should be paying them off every month. You should be very, very careful about using that, because as younger people are looking at their parents and grandparents and saying, oh, they're so lucky they have all this stuff, they have to keep in mind they also weren't financing it. Your parents and your grandparents did not have, well, one, they didn't have a huge house. I knew some very, very, very wealthy people, household names, when I was living in Seattle, and they lived very modestly. So they weren't ostentatious. They weren't trying to keep up with the Joneses. They lived in homes that were appropriate to their family situation, but they weren't trying to impress anybody. And when your last name is a household word, you don't need to impress anybody. So if you're going to live debt-free, more or less debt-free, you need to start off by thinking, I don't need to impress anybody. I just need to take care of myself. The only times I've ever had problems in my life have been when I'm trying to impress somebody else, somebody else thinks it's appropriate. So keep that in mind. So when is it appropriate to go into debt? When is it useful? And it can be very useful. When is it appropriate? And when is a good time to use it? One, if you have a clear plan to repay it. So you should be able to accommodate your debt payments without stressing. They should be very comfortable. You shouldn't have to worry about, am I going to make my credit card payment or my rent? Number one. And I always say with credit cards, they should be paid off in full every month, no matter what. Period, full stop. You should never compromise your essential expenses, such as your rent or mortgage payment. I always laugh and say, I want to make sure that I take care of that. And you should not have to go into your emergency savings. If your debt will provide measurable returns, it should have a clear financial benefit. This could be increasing your income, it could be building equity, it could be boosting your business, but you should have a financial benefit to taking on a debt. And if interest rates are manageable. Right now, interest rates are a bit high. Your low interest loans are going to be easier to repay. Federal student loans can be a problem in and of themselves. I'm going to address them in a different podcast, but I do want to mention them. They are low interest. There is a way to get rid of them. Okay. If you are taking on debt for a non-essential short-term gratification on very high interest, and you don't really have a payment plan, you're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants, you should then avoid it. Well, okay, so I've talked about When is a good time to take on debt? When is a bad time to take on debt? Different types of debt are very useful for growing business or increasing your net worth. So now, what if you've already run your credit cards up? Now what? Well, you have to have a plan. I am a huge believer, by the way, in planning. So I have a plan. I can kind of have it in the back of my mind. One, there's several, by the way, debt payoff strategies. One is the snowball method, and that is where you start with your smallest debt. I mentioned the very low credit limit credit card that I had. If I was going to use the snowball method, I would pay off that credit card, which is easy to do, and then I would put that credit card aside somewhere, and I would get my credit card out with the next highest limit that's been run up, and I would take the payment from my first credit card that's paid off and start putting that to the next credit card. What this does is it builds momentum. So call the debt snowball. You pay off the smallest balance first, and then you apply what you were going to pay on the smallest balance to the next smallest balance, and so on and so on. So it's kind of psychological because you're looking at it going, oh, I paid this credit card off. Oh, I paid this one off. Now I can move on to this one. And it does give you a dopamine boost. It does give you a psychological boost if you can eliminate smaller balances quickly. And actually, it's a very proven method. The debt avalanche method focuses on the interest rate. Now, the reason I advise the debt snowball rather than the debt avalanche, the debt avalanche prioritizes higher interest rates. So I would look at my credit cards, and if I had one, if I had a debt, say my car payment is at 3.9% interest, and my credit card is at 24% interest, but my credit card has a higher balance than what I currently owe on my car, I would keep the car payment and I would work on my credit card. I would pay that off first because you want to pay off your high interest debts first. Well, this is extremely effective. It's very cost effective, but you don't get that psychological boost of saying, oh, this one's paid off, oh, this one's paid off. It just takes longer to see initial progress, and for that reason, unless you're very, very disciplined, it's very easy to fall off on it. Debt consolidation is an option. Again, that's where you take out a loan, you pay off all of your multiple high interest debts with a single loan with a lower interest rate. There are pros and cons about it. I did a video on this last week. But it does simplify repayment, and it can reduce the total interest paid if you do it correctly. You can negotiate lower interest rates. So you could call your lenders and credit card companies and talk to them. I do, by the way, always recommend this. For one thing, creditors are usually happy to do whatever they can to help you pay them back. It is the lack of communication that usually causes issues. So you can call them. The worst thing they may say is, no, they can't do that. But if you call them and you're kind and polite and respectful, you're very, very likely to be able to negotiate a lower rate. So, and that can reduce the time and money needed to pay off debt. You can also, by the way, if you're not doing this, you should automate your payments. Never miss a due date. You should never have late fees on your debt. And it keeps your repayment plan back, keeps it on track. Well, you've taken on some good debt, you've paid off your bad debt, you have a plan to pay everything else off. Now, what do you do to avoid taking on debt in the future? Again, with good usage of debt, you may never be able to avoid. I am not an advocate of living on beans and rice. I seriously want you to live your life. But to avoid making debt mistakes in the future, first, you want to create a budget. My preferred method, because I am self-employed and I need to be able to visualize my cash flow is to take a calendar and write down all my payments. I used to take the back of an envelope and write down all of my outgoing payments and all of my income just to make sure that I had enough to cover. You have to learn to live within your means. If you don't have money for something and it is not something that's going to bring you income in the future, don't buy it. Don't buy it. Then you need to build your emergency fund. Most Americans cannot survive more than 2 paychecks. They can't afford any sort of an emergency financial. They can't afford to cover unexpected costs. So build an emergency fund, and that means at least 3 to 6 months of living expenses in a liquid fund that's easy to access, but maybe not in the same bank as your regular bank. In other words, by way of example, I bank with Chase. This is not an advertisement for Chase, but I do bank with them. And if I wanted to start an emergency fund, I would probably not have it at Chase. Why? Because I don't want to see that bank balance. It is too tempting. I want to have it at a different bank. Maybe I want to have it at a credit union where I can automate those payments to build up my emergency fund, and I don't see it. It's not in my face. I'm not seeing it every time I walk into the bank. And then make sure you're using your credit cards wisely. I've harped on this throughout this video. Only charge what you can pay off in full each month so that you never carry a balance. Invest in financial education. Now this is really important, and I'm going to be doing a lot of videos on financial education. I am speaking tomorrow at the Brewery, Utah Chamber of Commerce's Women in Business event on personal finance and financial education. Learn about money management. Learn about how to save. Learn about smart investing. Don't get so caught up, however, in trying to squeeze $1 out of every nickel that you worry about having change in your desk drawer. For a dark change, I've had seen people say, "Oh, you should never spend cash," which I disagree with. You should actually use cash. The idea of a cashless business is disturbing to me. We should always have cash that can't be tracked. We should always have a way to, have a few dollars for a lemonade stand or a few dollars for a yard sale. You'd like to put in grandchildren's or children's birthday cards. You don't need to be so obsessive about it that you're worried that the $5 and change that I have in my desk drawer isn't earning money. But you do need to learn about money management. I came to this late in life. I didn't learn about this when I was a teenager, even though I was already interested in accounting. I did not learn about this as a young adult. It wasn't until I had almost grown children that I learned about money management, and it was because I had to. So money management, saving strategies, and smart investing. And the idea of all of these is going to vary with the individual, but you need to know some strategies that you can use to increase your money and make informed financial decisions. That is the whole mission of Bookkeeping Made Simple, is to provide our clients with the tools that they need to make informed financial decisions about their business. So make sure that you are taking advantage of any financial education that comes your way. Now, understanding the difference between good uses of debt and bad uses of debt can help you make smarter financial decisions and achieve your goals more effectively. While using debt wisely can be a tool for growth and opportunity, please avoid using debt unwisely. And again, by that I mean don't go on shopping sprees with your credit cards. For that matter, don't go on shopping sprees with your debit cards. Plan your purchases. Make sure you're thinking this through. And that's going to differ for different income brackets. So if you are very low income, you may sweat over buying, a $2 soda. If you are wealthier, if you're middle class, you may not worry about that. That may be something you can absorb very easily, but you may worry a lot more about a clothing. It's going to kind of differ what you can afford to spend in the spending spree, but don't put it on credit cards unless you can pay them off at the end of the month. Once you've really taken control of your debt, and again, it could be you're just making a plan, but once you start taking control of your debt and your finances, your ability to earn and your ability to save, your ability to build wealth is going to go through the roof. Using debt poorly should be avoided altogether. Using debt thoughtfully should be encouraged. Thoughtfully being, it's going to bring in money later. It's going to really add value. You're going to be able to house your family and still build equity in your home. Those are really good uses of debt. And once you've developed healthy financial habits, you are going to be able to have a secure and prosperous future, which is exactly what I want for you. With that, let me go ahead and sign off the video. This is also going to be included in my podcast, or excuse me, on my blog post at mysimplebookkeeping.com/blog. And I am looking forward to talking to you again soon.